Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome back to tonight's second half. I hope everyone's Christmas Eve is going well. I've got an upload for you that I'd like to share with you before we get into it. A couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe, click the like button, and please leave a comment. It really does help, and guys, it definitely matters. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with tonight's second half, shall we? So, like I said earlier today, no power, no studio. About 45 minutes ago, we were informed, we stayed in a hotel last night, we were informed that the power is back on at my residence. I am currently de-icing the car and warming it up because I've got to load our 2 ball pythons and our 2 lizards. We have a crested gecko and a leopard gecko. We have a regular ball python and an albino ball python, my daughter's. All these are my daughter's pets. And then my cat. Well, when the power went out last night, we knew it was going to be out for a while, and I said, we cannot stay here. Our animals will freeze to death, and we will. So let's go. And we are waiting for the car to warm up, and I'm going to put all of these things in the Subaru and head home. Hopefully the apartment will be warmed up a little bit. I don't know. The building it's a empty, where I live, it's an empty building. No one's downstairs. It used to be an office, but the dentist who owned the building passed away. And so it's just me and my daughter and our many pets. So when I get home, hopefully it'll be warm and I can start putting everyone away and get back into the studio, because I really missed not sitting in my studio. I sit there probably 10 hours a day if I'm not doing other stuff, and I just really missed not being in there. So here's tonight's second half. Everyone stay safe, and if you guys are without power still wherever you are, I'm praying for everyone. I really hope everyone is okay. Alright guys, tonight's second half is going to be a combination of terrifying encounters with terrifying video evidence. Now, normally I leave it up to you guys to decide, but tonight I am going to give you my perspective on these videos, and I, for one, feel like every single video that I'm going to share in this upload is 100% real. So let's get into this. And today's first encounter. This experience has been passed down through relatives that did not openly talk about it much due to the way these Native Americans revere Sasquatch, and felt guilty about killing one. They especially felt guilty because this Sasquatch was believed to be more human than the average Sasquatch. The Salish Indian who recounts this makes this comment about this particular wild man. A Senecum is a word for someone born, not of direct human, but of Sasquatch kind. This may seem like a cruel joke, something to call a human with developmental disabilities, but the honest-to-God truth may be harder to swallow. The Sasquatch have interbred with women in the past, and the existence of these offspring have been swept under the rug and kept hidden like the hairy man. During the 60s, it was rumored that one of the town bishops of the local church Likely a Jesuit had taken in a freak of some sort. This freak was not human, but not animal enough to be rejected by the Jesuit. So the Jesuit was keeping him in the basement and feeding him. The only reason knowledge of this exists is because people would hear things at the church, inhuman things. If you ask me, the Jesuits did not want this thing to be out and about. This sounds somewhat unbelievable, but keep in mind that the reason the men who shot the hairy man went a little insane was because they killed a human. A giant, ridiculously muscular human covered in hair, but a human. To human to parade about town in the back of a pickup truck, if you know what I mean. The Sasquatch, or Skenecum, of this experience had become particularly bold about raiding the homes when people were away and stealing their food. The account starts when the wild man was having his way, free rein. He was getting bolder. He started to break into houses during the middle of the day. Children would see him and flip out. Police were called. Meetings were held. The town was becoming more and more shaken up by the presence of this unknown intruder. This is when something incredible happened to the particular family who was favored by the hairy man. They had become so lax and accepting of the hairy man's presence that one night, while standing on the porch, the father was yanked off by his feet in full view of the entire family. They screamed and huddled together and cried while whatever it was fought with their father on the porch. The sounds of fighting, screaming, and knowing that their father was powerless against whatever it was. It must have been unspeakably traumatic for the children. They are now grown, and I wonder to this day how much this has affected their lives. The father was gone for days. Whatever it was that had taken him had carried him off into the night after the struggle on the porch. There was blood on the grass, and the family grabbed the neighbors and the men of the community to help recover the father. The men got together and followed the signs and trails left by whatever it was. Drops of blood and signs of something large passing through. They followed this trail all the way to the very creek which my uncle had spotted this Sasquatch at. They followed the creek all night. When the men returned the next day, they did not speak a word, the whole group of grown men, and not one of them was willing to speak about what had happened. They had, however, found the father. They recovered him. He was beaten black and blue over his entire body. Ribs broken, arms and legs. The father was in shock, incoherent, and could not speak a word. One of my uncles had gone to see the man and his family in the hospital. There was a fair amount of goodwill being shown to the family that went through this experience. Nobody knew what had happened, only that the father was close to death and the family was very shaken up. So my uncle stopped to pay his respects and saw for himself the father lying in the bed of the hospital. His eyes were bulging wide. He was trembling constantly. This man had been beaten badly, but something else was wrong with him. He was traumatized. He died that night, and to this day nobody knows what grabbed him or what happened to him. To this day, the men who went on the recovery mission to save him have kept these secrets to themselves. Only a select circle, including my father, remembers this incident. Almost nobody still talks about them. I've shared them with you for what it's worth. Those men found what it was that took the father. They found the hairy man and they killed it. They shot it to death with high-powered rifles and buried the body. The men who did this feel incredibly guilty. Sasquatch is a matter of fact here, and the older generations told us to avoid them, leave them alone, because they are human beings. They are not animals. They are not magic. They can most certainly become monsters, and this one definitely corroborates that. But the hairy man, the Bigfoot, is so human-like that even here, when a group of men killed one, they were so traumatized by their experiences that they felt guilty of murder. Back in the 70s, there was no desire to be rich and famous for killing a Bigfoot. There was no desire to even talk about Bigfoot. These kinds of things were dirty little secrets, especially on the reservations. Yes, there were plenty of white children bumping into Sasquatch and getting into the newspapers, but the native community, it's tight-lipped about this, even to this day. Alright guys, so today's first video is a group of hunters or just a group outside in the woods at night. I'm really not sure what they're doing. But they obviously had come across something in the woods and, well, it terrified them so badly that they fled the woods that evening. Check it out.
Hey, eyeballs. Two eyeballs. Bam, straight over your right shoulder. Okay. I still see two huge eyeballs.
I see a head.
Alright. I
Yeah, probably the same direction to the
see the eyeballs, and it's definitely not the road. Because it stepped to the right.
Yep. You seeing the same thing?
Dusty, keep an eye out back behind us. Grab this big light if you don't care. If something does run out, it might scare it off. Yeah, it's definitely up the lake. Because I keep losing it. Okay, it's blinking. It just blinked. No, honestly, it's still there. But I still see it blinking.
Okay.
You see it?
I tell you, we need to
Get out of here.
get out of here.
That's what I'm thinking.
Alright guys, so normally I don't share how I feel about videos. I just say, you guys decide. But today I am going to share how I do feel, and for me, that one seems 100% legit, and it is absolutely terrifying. On to tonight's second encounter. When I was a teenager back in the early 2000s, I had a great fascination with werewolves. My uncle told me this time when he and his friend were driving around Arlington, Ohio, and a creature had walked in the middle of the road that looked like a huge dog, and the back reached the hood of their car, but was longer and had more mass than any dog they had ever seen. He said that when it leapt to the side of the road and they drove off quickly. Now, I at first called him a liar and said that's BS. But I went down to Florida 2 years ago and stayed with a cousin whose dad is one of my uncle's best friends. One night I was talking to him and I said this, "Did my uncle ever tell you the time that he and some friends were driving around Arlington?" This is where he interrupted me instantly and said a werewolf jumped out in front of the car. Now my uncle had not talked to this person in over 5 years, and I had not mentioned anything about this to him prior to me asking. I was later told by my dad's girlfriend, who grew up in Arlington on a farm, that something happened to her when she was about 10 years old. She said that her family were eating supper one night and they remembered that they had forgotten to feed the chickens that day, so they had to run out and do it after dinner. Her dad told her and her younger brother to go outside and feed them. They got out into the shed where the chickens were housed and heard scratching and clawing on the other side. They both froze on spot, not moving a muscle. Her dad then walked to the back porch and turned the light on and yelled to them, "When I tell you to run, I want you to hold on to your brother and run for this door. Don't stop until you get to me." So they ran as fast as they could when their dad said, "Run." When she reached the safety of the house, she asked them why they had to run. He refused to say anything. So one day when she was 16, her father told her what had happened. He said he had seen a shadow of something that reminded him of a bear on the side of the barn by the shed. He said that it was tall, slender, and unlike any bear he had ever seen. That is all he had told her. Today's second video is someone either snowshoeing or cross-country skiing on a winter's day, and they are obviously using their phone, and they spot something in the distance, and they zoom in, and they see something very frightening. And here it is, guys. All right, guys, to me, that video says, yes, I am real. Why? Because the way the creature moves in the background and how the reaction of the person who's filming it is. That's about all I've got on that. So, on to today's third encounter. This happened to me in the mountains of southern Oregon. I'm 48 years old and I've spent my life hunting, fishing, camping, and for the last few years working in the woods/mountains. You cannot live in Oregon and not hear of Bigfoot. It's like Canadians never hearing of moose or hockey. However, minus a possible encounter when I was about the age of 13, I have never actually seen one. That is, until last year. I worked in a particular area of the wilderness for 2 years by myself. The first year was uneventful and in the woods. You'd hear normal wildlife sounds. Last year, in February, however, that all changed. I was in one of those spots on the mountain riding a chainsaw. I had just felled a tree. I had made one cut into it, and off to the west I heard 4 thundering blasts like something took a big piece of wood and tried to break a tree in half with it. I mean, it was loud. I immediately stopped and looked in the direction it had come from. It sounded like it may have been off to the distance a bit. Maybe like it echoed from somewhere off the mountain. I went back to work. Approximately 30 minutes later, I had moved 80 yards east on this slope and fell another tree again. I made one cut into it when suddenly there were 4 more loud blasts from directly behind me from the south. Whatever it was had followed me and got up behind me this time. I flipped around looking up the hill briefly and then just picked my saw and left the area for the day and went home. Whatever it was, I felt, did not want me there. About a week later, I was in a different spot on the mountain. I was cutting firewood and had my 3-month-old German Shepherd with me. She was always at my feet everywhere I went, which will come into play here shortly. Anyway, I fell and cut some standing silver madrone about 30 yards off the road. I was packing as big of logs as I could throw on my shoulder down the bank above the road, pitching them down to load them in the truck. I had made several trips and decided to go down the 6-foot embankment to the truck and grab a cold one. As I climbed up the bank, I looked down the tree line to my east at about 80 yards away, and I see what looks like a large red-haired silhouette standing next to a large fir tree. The sun was off to its back and lit up part of the left shoulder and head, its right shoulder, right arm, and leg. I couldn't really see anything except the outline of reddish-brown hair that the sun was hitting from behind. I wasn't really sure what I was looking at, but eventually I found out. Anyway, I'm thinking maybe my mind is playing tricks on me. I go back to work. I made a few more trips packing logs, one at a time on my shoulder, and decided to stop and look down there again. However, this time I didn't see it. I'm still convinced I'm not actually seeing anything in particular. I make a few more trips down to the truck and I look down there again, this time at the exact moment my dog starts growling. I look down at her and she's facing the opposite direction I am and growling into the woods. That was unnerving. I looked and saw nothing, but once again I packed up and left immediately. Now things are starting to get scary. Several days later, I'm heading up the mountain. I have my earbuds in, listening to a podcast. It was a dreary, overcast morning. It was around 8 or 9, so it was daylight, but not like a bright, sunny day. I came around the corner that followed a little rock ledge, then flattened out for an opening. Something caught my attention to my left. I'm staring at this thing, thinking, what the F is that? As I approach, I'm looking right into the face of something that my brain registers as a gorilla. I'm about parallel to it when I realize what I'm looking at. There is no doubt it is 100% a Bigfoot that was squatted down. I very clearly saw this animal, as it was only 30 feet off the road. It was black in color and looked like it was covered in 4-inch dreadlocks. The hair was matted looking, and the arms and shoulders were massive. It had black eyes, a kind of conical-shaped forehead, and it was kind of grayish blue colored. The brow ridge was very pronounced as well as its cheekbones. It had forward-facing nostrils and just looked like pure evil to me. This all happened so fast that it took my brain a few seconds to think to stop and get a better look and maybe take a picture. At that point, I was driving by it. There was a place to turn around, so I just hit the gas and sped up to it. Turned around and headed back while ripping out my earbuds and getting the camera ready. However, it was gone. It couldn't have taken a couple minutes, but it was gone, so I drove back and forth through this area probably 4 or 5 times, searching, looking for anything that may have possibly tricked my mind somehow. However, there was nothing even remotely close to what I had seen. So I ended up telling a couple of people about this. One was my brother, and he asked why I didn't get a picture. I tried to explain that by the time I processed what I was looking at, I was literally passing it by. Then it took a second to turn around and try to grab a picture, and it was gone. Okay, so now things are really getting to scare me. Exactly 3 days later, I'm back on the mountain cutting wood. I had my German Shepherd pup with me. I was in the spot on that mountain that led to the dead end. I turned around and pulled off to the side of this old dirt mountain road. There was an area full of standing, dead madrone. About 100 yards below this road was an old regrowth area, a bunch of 8-foot Douglas fir trees down there. I'm cutting some wood maybe 30 feet down from the road when I noticed something black in between two of the small Douglas fir trees. I see this black thing and immediately think that it's a black Bigfoot I had seen previously. I think about my brothers questioning me why I didn't get a pic, so in that moment of courage, which I soon regretted, I thought I'm going to get a picture. I walked back up to my truck and grabbed my semi-auto 12 gauge, put 3 extra double-aught buck rounds in the breast pocket of my overalls, took out my cell, and get ready to take a pic. I headed back there and was about halfway when I looked down at my feet to check on my dog, and she wasn't there. So I turned around and she's sitting there watching me beside the truck, so I called her name and she didn't move. At the same time, I heard 4 steps from down below where I had been, heading towards to take that pic. These steps were heavy and broke branches on the ground with every step. I swung around that way, and at that moment from up over the truck I heard something I had never heard before. I have a hard time of explaining it. It was a sequence of sounds that almost sounded ape-like, with some suction-like clicking sounds thrown in. At that moment, my heart sank into my stomach, and it all came together. I was surrounded. No doubt the black thing had just heard 4 steps. It was the same beast. I had just looked right into its face 3 days before. There was no doubt that the red-haired one was above me. Holy F! I froze for a moment, then started sounding like a crazy man. I literally verbalized, "I'm sorry, I'll not try and approach you anymore. I'm going to put my gun down. I just need to pick this up, cut some wood, and then I'll leave." So I back up to the truck and leaned the 12 gauge against it. I loaded up the wood and my stuff and left. I didn't go back to that area for a while, and when I did, it was like the mountain was back to normal. The wildlife and the sounds were there. I have no doubt that my drive to get a picture to show my brother damn near got me killed. If I'm ever in that situation again, there will be 0 chances that I will try and get closer in order to take a picture. No way. Today's third picture kind of goes with this story. Guy is in the middle of the woods and sees this huge black creature kind of walk through. It is unnerving, definitely. Here it is. Check it out. Now, you can definitely clearly see this creature in the woods. There's no doubt about it. Um, it's, I mean, it's kind of. I wish there was more detail, but I'm pretty convinced. The last video and experience go together. This experience and this video are connected 100%, and this my friends is the ticket. My kids and I saw some sort of creature at the edge of the field stalking a group of deer today right before sunset, maybe 8 p.m. It was moving its head and ears, and it was not a tree stump. We only captured its attention a few times to where it would turn and look directly at us. You can see it turn its head and look over at us in the video, and then it immediately turn and watch those deer. It was not concerned with us at all. It was completely fixated on the deer. I know it's another typical blurry picture where you can barely make out its features. It was across a large field, and it was the clearest picture our phones could get. But you can clearly see its ears and eye in the shape of its head, long arms in the front, and what looks like a mane around its neck where the hair is thicker and longer. It does not look like a bear to me, and there are not any cougars around this area that I know of. This was out east from Sasago Lake, Minnesota, where a family friend of ours had a pretty terrifying encounter some years back with a creature that walked on two legs, bent backward, and ran across the road right in front of her vehicle. She was so traumatized by the experience, she will not even talk about it. Anyway, it's taught me to keep an open mind about things. We have 2 encounters not far from this area. Actually, maybe I'll come and share those someday. But for now, I'm just looking for some feedback on what you guys think. And here is that video, and it is quite compelling. I'll give her that. And yeah, it is across a large field, and I don't know what kind of phone she has, but you know, if she's got a semi mid $100 phone, it's probably going to catch a picture like this. I don't know, but check it out.
Its ear moved.
Yeah, what is that?
Ooh, it looks like an owl. That's actually kind of creepy.
What is that?
I think it just turned and looked at us.
I seen its ear flick.
Oh, it looked.
Oh my god! It just looks and perked its ears up.
Wait, where is it? Oh, I see it.
Do it again, Kenna. Do it again.
It's gonna do it. Make a noise.
No.
Why? Its ear moved.
Yeah, what is that?
Ooh, it looks like an owl. That's actually kind of creepy.
What is that?
I think it just turned and looked at us.
I seen its ear flick.
Oh, it looked.
Oh my god! It just looks and perked its ears up.
Wait, where is it? Oh, I see it.
Do it again, Kenna. Do it again.
It's gonna do it. Make a noise.
No.
Why?
All right, guys, so you can see this creature move. You can definitely tell that it is not a stump. The kids are trying to, get it to move. Very dangerous. I mean, I don't know. I'm not in that predicament, so I don't know what I would do if I had my daughter with me. But I most certainly would think more about having my kid call out to this thing a second or third time. But either way, nothing happened, thank God. And the kid and her are safe. But it is a terrifying video. All right, guys, like I said in the beginning of the upload, I really do have all the people that are in this family and everyone else actually who are in the inclement weather we're having. It's pretty crazy. This storm was vicious. The wind where I live was just we could hear it whizzing through. We were on the third floor of a hotel, and it was just, unbelievably powerful. We looked outside, and they have a big Christmas tree in the park across the hotel that we stayed at in my town, and it was pretty much bent over at times. The snow, ice, just terrible. So I really do pray that everyone is okay. It's terrible. Anyway, with that, I want to thank you all for all your support, and truly does mean the world to me that you guys are here. So thank you. May the Great Spirit watch out for us all. May He guide us down that path that we call life. Stay safe.